Good morning and welcome back to part 2 of taking your understanding of dentures and wax-ups to the next level. My name is Sarah and I will be facilitating the webinars this morning. For those of you who weren't able to attend part 1, I encourage you to go and watch it on our website. But part 1 focuses on the tools and products that Tom uses, whereas today Tom will be focusing on the application and techniques. So before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. First, if you have any questions, please use the questions box at the bottom of your right-hand screen, and you can type them in there. We will be answering all questions at the end of the webinar. Again, this webinar is approved for NBC credit. So within about 48 hours, you'll receive an email on how to obtain that credit. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Tom Zaleske. He is a member of the Association of Indiana Dental Laboratories and a past founding member of the Chicagoland Dental Technician Study Group. He has 25 years practicing as a dental technician and lab owner. So without further ado, I give you Tom.
Hey, good morning, everybody, or evening if you're across the pond, as they say. Welcome to the second part of a two-parter here, natural waxing techniques. We're going to talk a bit today about positioning, emergence, and contouring. Big topics out there because with a more demanding patient, of course, we're looking for better ways to project a natural look. For you that already know me, you can visit my YouTube channel, Tom Zale 56. I have about 17 videos in there on assorted different things, a little self-promotion going on in there as well. I also have a website, matrixdentalab.com, and if you go to the technique and tips area, you'll find a whole load, about 57 PDFs, all articles that you can download and continue to enhance your position as a technical resource for your doctors. Of course, today's webinar is sponsored by Whipmix, and I want to thank Bob Long and Craig and Stuart over at Whipmix. Been very gracious to put these webinars on with me, and really appreciate their support on these kinds of things for dental technology. We obviously in my laboratory I use several of their products. One of the reasons why they felt that they'd like to sponsor me for this. So anyways, let's move on to the topic at hand, and that is about natural waxing. And you know, how do we know what looks natural? Well, we have to observe it. You know, we have to have pictures of real tissue with real teeth. I know a lot of people go online and they look for pictures of really fancy looking dentures, and that's all good, but that person's interpretation of nature isn't exactly what we should be looking to do. It should be the interpretation of nature as it exists. And really the best way to do that is by searching the web. You could put tissue, teeth, you know, Google everything you can. Try to get as many pictures as you can, because what we're really trying to do is we're trying to imitate this stuff here. We're not looking to turn it into artistry. We're looking at imitation, and that's what the real goal here is. So, you know, I see this is natural tissue, and if I saw some of those artistic pieces that are out there, they don't have a whole lot in common. One of the places that I found work best for me as far as to continue to remind me of what nature looks like is a book that I purchased, and it's for sale out there. It's called Analysis. It's by Ubasi, and it's a phenomenal book. It's about 300 and some odd pages long. It's coffee top size, and coffee tabletop size, and it is just an unbelievable source of natural pictures, from buccal corridors to anterior positioning of teeth to tissue and the way tissue molds itself to the different angulations of tooth emergence and so forth. It's a phenomenal book, and if you haven't gotten it already, I suggest that you get out there and get it right away if you want to mimic nature, if you want to imitate nature. 384 pages, and they're all natural, and you get pages like this. You have corridor pages, you have lowers only, posteriors only. The point is that even the most seasoned veteran at dental technology has to continue to remind themselves of what nature looks like, because otherwise your vision gets muddled by your view in your own head. So again, that's one way to do it. Another way, by the way, is what I started doing years ago, and that is that I asked doctors that I worked for who took intraoral photographs if they could take pictures of healthy mouths whenever one came in, especially after cleanings or after good restorative work. And I took those pictures and I continued to mount them at my workstation, as you see here, and I rotate through them. Yeah, you know, I show this picture because I want you to also see there are some other elements here that I find that work to my advantage when I'm trying to imitate nature. One, of course, are actual photos of the patient, which I have this little stand, and I'll actually print pictures up on my computer that I get from my doctors, either through email or sent to me directly in the box along with the case. And I'll either scan or I'll print these up. But the fact is that I'll blow them up big enough so that I can discriminate what I'm trying to achieve, what we have, what we're trying to correct. This one here are some corrections. But I actually take these little magnets and stick them on there and put them right in front of me. So I have this to remind me, this to remind me. Then over here I have the these, this is Dr. Fritz Kopp has his aesthetic guideline sheet. I keep that in front of myself. And then for communicating online with my doctors and actual pictures in there, I might want to refer back to something. I keep this laptop at my disposal as well. So you can see that, you know, I'm always reminding myself of what nature looks like and not looking at my own work and trying to imitate or duplicate what I've already accomplished. I'm always looking for a different approach. I guess the message is this: seek imitation. In other words, seek to imitate. Don't seek artistry. Observe nature. There, that's nature. Nature isn't a lot of ruts. It's not a lot of over contour. It's not a lot of over color. It's actually very subtle. Further examples, just to show you things that you should be looking at these pictures. These, you know, long papillas, they don't exist. They're short and blunted, rounded and full. The contour of the gingival third of the tooth, it relates to the fullness here. A depressed neck would mean this area would not be as full. So, you know, look to nature for the examples. You can see them all over the place. Just some more pictures of nature. I have them for coloring as well. You know, when I'm looking to colorize my dentures, either in wax, which I like to do for pop, for presentation. I go for these kind of shots to show me there are vascular areas, there are depressive areas that have depth in different coloring. We have the blanching, of course, which everybody knows about. And again, I go back to the Papilla Design. I go back to the Eminence Design. Eminence, of course, being that area above the tooth where the root exists. Again, here are common observations. When I look at nature, look at natural pictures, and again, artistry is critiqued, but imitation is observed and dismissed. So the closer we get to imitating nature, the less people notice. But if it's artwork you want, there's a lot of people that go to the Art Institute and sit in front of a Monet and try to decide what the guy's trying to accomplish. But we're trying to make something that disappears, something that blends in, something that imitates nature. So in order to do that, we need to observe some commonalities that we see in all the photos of nature, and that would be Papilla Design, as I mentioned, contact and embrasure areas. We'll talk a little bit about that. You know, folks, I'd love to go into huge detail on everything, but I'm going to touch the high points, and hopefully you'll either come see a lecture of mine or maybe we'll do a live thing and you can come to that. But anyways, emergence profiles is another thing that we look at. The subtlety of contours, which I just mentioned, and the smoothness of texture. I see so many over-textured dentures out there and not removable prosthetics. And you have to look at the The tissue does not have striations and stripe lines in it. All right. So the papilla design, it determines the outline of the tooth. You know, where the papilla terminates on the line angle of the tooth really projects the shape of the tooth. Believe it or not, once there's acrylic, and this is all acrylic, you're going to have reflective areas, color reflection in the interdental areas. You know, with full broad papillas, you have better reflection, better color opacity. All of these contours should be convex in all directions. The papilla design should be convex. Concave would mean that you're jamming food, you're jamming bolus into those areas where it's been carved out. You want it full, just like nature. Nature's tissue is full body and blunted, and it's done that way so that when the food rolls off, first off, it's clean, and second off, it stimulates the tissue. Terminates near the labial face of the tooth, and I'll show you that, meaning that that papilla should be in line with the facial of the tooth. And then, of course, the shape according to age, shorter and wider with age, but not super long for young. It just doesn't exist that way. Here's kind of an example I dragged out of someplace. Here's your not desirable. See how it's scalloped out, but here's your desirable contour. The papilla is, if you're looking at this from the top or the incisal angle, you can see this is almost in line with the facials of the teeth on either side, and that would follow suit across the anterior. You can draw a curve just to see, but I wanted to. You have to try to imitate that. Is what gives it that natural look. Papilla design alone is going to up your game unbelievably. Once you get the handle of what papillas actually look like and how the angulations of the papillas work, I've seen people jump like years ahead of what they have been producing up to that point. Here's another angle of it. Here's one that's waxed. You can see it's full, it's blunted. It's not providing a dirty area or a collection area where it can get dirty. This is still very broad, blunted, and the bolus is going to roll off of that. Just another angle, the same thing, just to show you, give you some examples of what you should be seeking. The case that I'm working on presently, I wanted to show you. See the papilla design? It has another commonality in papilla design is the angulation. See this angulation? This angulation is in this direction. It's not like this where the contact area is all filled with tissue or wax. It's blunt, it's rounded, and it's full. You can see it follows suit all the way through. Okay? This is what you're looking for. Here's an example of a poorly done one. Just to give you an idea, see what happens when it's so long. See how natural it looks. See how the length of it also lends itself to ledging in this area here. There's ledging. Now this is still in wax. I'm sure the individual that did this case is probably going to polish that out. But the fact of the matter is it exists, and I'm always crazy about making sure the wax mimics pretty much as close as possible to the way it's going to be in acrylic, because we have to project the value from the get-go, not say, oh, well, we'll finish it up real nice. It has to present well so that it can be evaluated correctly, and the doctor can make corrections based on the entirety of the contours, entirety of the amount of tooth showing, and so forth, and the patient has to do so as well. So again, we'll talk a little bit about this angle here. Well, just another example I wanted to show you. You know, I was talking about all the things that don't look natural. This, I think, pretty much encompasses most of it. Real choppy. I never see tissue that's all modeled like that with inconsistencies in the form and contour. These overly long papillas. And there, if you notice here, it's all carved out. Going to be a great place for bacteria and food to collect. Again, I'm not picking this individual apart. I just find that this is a really good example of what really doesn't look natural and what we really are not seeking. Ideal interproximal angles for papilla shape are, as I mentioned earlier. And that would be here and here. See this angle here? This angle is lower. It's not as steep. And that's the big deal here. It's not as steep. If it was this way, you would have your papilla way down here, almost on top of the contact area. But because this is full and blunted, you can see it just looks more natural. It also appeals to the line angle of the tooth to project the shape of the tooth as well. Because there's, you know, as an old technician told me once, show the tooth. That's what they're paying for. See the drawback? The drawback here is, again, when it comes on that angle, no good. It just, and the other thing is here too, you know, just as a point of fact, I never like to show that much of the gingival third of the tooth. You know, if you need length on a tooth, then I say order a longer tooth, because I like to terminate the tissue into the gingival third, but not almost to the CEJ. Those people that use the CEJ to define the shape of the tooth, I think that, at least I used to do it, and I never thought it looked that natural. As soon as I started to realize that tissue terminates on the gingival third of that tooth, and not so far, not so close to the CEJ, I started to realize a much more natural looking setup. You can see what I mean. I mean, these examples really illustrate it quite well. Just another example. I just, you know, again, I'm just trying to illustrate. Again, here, I don't know what exactly was being accomplished here. If it was supposed to look like the tissue was resorbing, I think they missed the mark, because if it was to resorb, it would come here, and then it would be just a little bit of resorption here at the distal corner of that tooth, and it would show a little root. But nonetheless, again, you can see the failings of these pointed papillas. See how it hides this area right here? Well, that's where the line angle of the tooth is, and that line angle is what dictates the form. You know, ovoid, square, rectangular, and by uncovering it, by changing the angulation, if he was to have changed the angulation this way, or she, it would have exposed more of the tooth. And then we could have done something with this too, because that's just not acceptable. And just a side view, again, I took these off the internet. You know, I'm not picking on anybody. Just, you know, they're great examples of what I'm trying to show is not what we're trying to accomplish. And I'm sure that this person's grown past this. But I see these kind of cases come in finished with this, and they exist out there. And, you know, if we're going to project value in our work, let's do it in means other than just buying a piece of equipment. Let's hone our skill levels to the point where we're all competing with a higher skill level, rather than just going out and buying a certain piece of equipment because some manufacturer told you that you need it. You know, I mean, we need tools, no doubt about it, but let's lean more on the technique. What do you say? Here's kind of the goal. On this side here is nature. Of course, I showed that earlier. And then here is my attempt at imitating nature. Is it super great? No, but I think it's closer to what we're trying to imitate, which is this. And I continue to look at these pictures to remind me that this is what I want. This is what I want. I'm trying to accomplish it here. But you can see, if tissue covers this tooth here, then it would be fuller here. See how it's fuller? If this was higher up and the gingival third was starting to turn into the tissue, this wouldn't be nearly as full. You know, X equals Y equals Z. You always have to make everything coincide. The tissue fullness coincides with a prominence of the third. Less prominence in one is less prominence in the other. Again, just nature and then my attempt. Here's what happens when the papillas are long and full. Although we're not showing any pink up here, we're showing all kinds of pink here. And I don't know about you, but that's like a little red arrow pointing at that, saying, "Look at me, look at me." And again, it also goes with progression of embrasure. What I'm talking about is this. You know, an embrasure gives that look of freedom, you know. And there's a divergence of proximal surfaces of the anterior teeth from the contact point. So as you can see, as the contact point moves, our area moves up, the embrasures open. There's a progression. And when we're waxing these cases, if this papilla came way down here, then you're right on the contact area, in which case, that case I just showed you previously was. But by shortening and blunting it, you're getting the full benefit of the tooth shape. And again, it progresses upward. Here's a case that came in. It was one of those bago denture ladies that I occasionally comes in, and the doctor sends me pictures of all the dentures that she had and then the things she hated and liked on certain ones. But these were two really good examples of two different dentures, not the same denture, but two different dentures and two different ways that a laboratory looked at this and set the teeth and how they addressed this area here where we have way too much tissue showing. And I blame the doctor's evaluation skills on this as well, because if this showed up in the smile during the try-in evaluation, it should have been corrected at that point. And I corrected this case and made everything work the way it should. So it wasn't a space issue as much as it was trying to figure out where they were going before they started and then had a plan. We more or less just set teeth in contact and called it done. But again, you'll notice the embrasure progression is nothing here, and then wham, there's a big opening here, and same thing here. There's no progression. There's no contact area progression. Here's that same case. It's my attempt. It's desired. We're desired to have contacts at here, here, and here, and as it does, they open up here, here, and here. See? See how it opens here, here, and here. Very slow computer today. Okay. Here's a bit about emergence profile. Emergence profile, in case you don't know, is the way the tooth emerges from the tissue. If you need examples of emergence profile, hold your hand up and look at your fingernail as it exits your cuticle. There's still nail underneath. You're always trying to imitate the fact that there's still something underneath the tissue. We don't want the teeth to look like they're laying on the tissue. We want them to look like they're emerging from the tissue. Again, you saw this picture earlier. I just think it's a great example of emergence profile. It's a good picture for that. And you can see it. It follows suit on all of it. These teeth are emerging. They're not laying. They're emerging. There's the illusion that there's fullness, that there's something under here, even though we know there's not. Okay, we're looking for that illusion. Oh, go back a second. And it goes this away. This away. See how that central, see how that lateral, see the profile emerges. Okay. When we're contouring, we need to do it subtly. There's some examples of some wax contouring, very subtle, and again, we're trying to imitate nature. I always set my cases up first what I call primary veneering, which means that I literally take the one brand of wax, which, well, actually two brands, Yates and Mottloyd all season for the setup, as I mentioned in the first part of the lecture or webinar last time. And I wax it to full contour, and I do what they call primary veneering. And I lay my Solidus 84 over the top of the Yates and Mottloyd wax that I use for the setup. And now I have all my contours in place, and then I can begin to characterize from there. But I have to have the basic form in place. So, you know, I have to outline the teeth. You know, lots of people use lots of different instruments. I'll show you two ways that I do it, or two instruments I use as well. Again, very difficult to show you video enhancement, so I'll do the best I can to show you the instruments, and maybe it'll make some sense. This would be my basic setup and wax contouring. And we have to expose the necks of the teeth. Well, a lot of people use like a carver. I use this little deal that I made. Basically, I'll show you it closer up. It has a flame point to it and a beveled edge, and it's more like drawing in the outline. You'll also notice something else. I don't know how you carve your teeth in wax or how you expose your teeth, but I expose the teeth in the wax with it upside down, looking at it in reverse, so that I have control over the gingival cowl and the actual contour of the teeth. I guess it's a preference thing. You notice, though, when I don't have it on the model, I'm always bracing with my fingers to make sure that I don't push too hard on this. Always a lot of control issue here because we don't want to move any teeth. So I control the pressure by bracing this in this way. But again, I always attack it upside down, not right side up. So, another instrument that I've used is this little Urkel tool. I like it because I can get in and really define my papilla areas. Again, just to show you this flame, let me go on here. I probably have a better example. Yeah. Now that little flame tool, this is basically what I did. Is I took an instrument that I had, and I basically turned it into this little flame. Now you notice it's not real sharp on that because I don't want to scratch the teeth. But on the other side, I have like a little beveled edge on both sides. What that does, it helps the wax just kind of scallop away, helps it peel back, and it's almost like a drawing instrument for me. Of course, I'm using harder wax around the teeth for the final waxing. The primary waxing is my Solidus 84, which is a pretty firm wax, but nonetheless, I'm using this Urkel form tool also as well. I lean on both. See here, I got a little crazy with my waxing instrument, but the fact is that this has some natural contouring on it, which helps me to fully detail out my case with contours as I go. Let me show you. Oh, real quickly, again, in case you weren't aware, we have the gingival third, middle third, and incisal third on our anterior teeth. And like I was speaking to earlier, I like to bring my gingiva down a bit into that gingival third area when I'm waxing it. Here's a good example of how things change. I just took a picture somebody had posted, and you'll notice, you know, there's a CEJ exposed. The tooth turns in, but there's no fullness of tissue here. I thought it would be kind of cool just to modify it. So what I did was I just took and took a little Photoshop and enhanced it. Let's see if it will do it. Root form dictates tissue contour. There's your CEJs. I don't know exactly. Okay, there it is. Really slow computing today. I don't get that. It wasn't that slow when I ran through it. But the fact of the matter is, it is. You can see I'm highlighting the CEJ. Now, I can't show you what I was going to show you, but it would have been filled out. When we're defining the eminence definition, I like to fall back on this little instrument that I made. The point of the instrument is that it has a narrower rounded area and a broader rounded area. And you know, this kind of a tool works much better when I'm defining my eminences. And eminentia, of course, is not like a little mound like right here. An eminence follows the root form. The fullness follows the root form. So I have to have an instrument where first off I can smooth out these broad areas where I use this broader curved area, and then on the coming in closer to the tooth in the interproximal, although I don't want to scoop it out, I still want to form some angulation, so I use that little, I turn the instrument on edge a bit, and then I'll take and kind of not scoop, but scrape the area just a bit so that I start to diffuse the contours and blend them in. But I have to have something narrower so that it gives me that little definition point. But it can't be so narrow that it leaves like little scratchy lines. And that's why it's a little broader and rounder, and this is a little broader, and this is a little bit narrower, but they both have a nice little curve. So eminence form, just to reiterate, is determined by the underlying root in regard to the width of the root as a continuation. In other words, like I showed you earlier, how it continues underneath, and of course down of the cervical third prominence. And remember, if the tooth angles like this cuspid does, then the eminentia angles with it as well. Don't make your eminence like the tooth would be standing straight up and down on axis. If this goes on angle, this goes on angle. You know what? It does a really cool thing. When you follow the axes of the teeth, it makes the embrasures look more natural. I don't know if you've noticed on some of those other cases I showed you earlier, but it definitely has a more natural appearance because of the fact that I followed the contour of the root underneath as it related to the long axis of the tooth. And here, this is just a little, I just want to remind you that this area here is where the root is, and then it tapers upward and inward. Again, some things to keep in mind. Now, I just pulled this one off the internet just to show you. I highlighted the actual eminences, and the eminences are kind of like narrower. They kind of like all kind of do the same thing. It's rather mechanical, and I show you that so that you'll avoid those pitfalls and not fall into them. There's that instrument again. I took a cement spatula. No, I didn't. I took a a ceramic tool, and I heated it up and I bent it the way I wanted and rounded it up and converted it into a usable instrument for myself to accomplish what I was looking for without having to pick up two instruments now or three. I only have to pick up one, and by turning it on angle or edge, I can get the effects that I need without continually picking up and dropping tools. Because that's really, a big part of this is, picking up and placing and picking up and placing, that gets time consuming. We want to get the contours in with a tool that will have multi-functions. And again, I'll show you wide removal here when I turn it on that edge, and then narrow concavity. See how when I turn it on edge, now I can go through in here. I'm sure there are other instruments in the laboratory that you could find that you could accomplish this with. I know that Urco tool I showed earlier has that. I just show this because it's kind of a cool thing I did, and let your imagination run wild. If you need to have a certain contour, make a tool. I mean, that's how we came up with tools from the Dark Ages. Every time there was something, a specific task, somebody came up with an idea for a tool. Same thing here. I'm sure most of us all have some things that we've made in our laboratories since we are technicians. I just wanted to show you too, that wax has great carvability. That's that, well actually both of them, that Yates and Mottloyd or Yates and Bird all-season wax has great carvability, and then also the Yeti Solidus wax that I used to veneer over the top of it has great carvability as well. And if you're getting this kind of peeling back from your instrument, then there's the right amount of pressure and the right amount of control. And I just give you that as an example for, when the wax hasn't been overheated multitude of times because we either overheat the wax and don't keep it at the right temperature and melt out all the properties, or if you don't have the right instruments and the right carvability characteristics of the wax together. Otherwise, you get this kind of stuff, and that's kind of nice. You can tell right away. It's kind of like when you have the right speed on a drill bit, and the stuff just kind of squiggles out of the hole. It's the same thing, same principle. When the speed is right, it has this kind of property. When the pressure and speed is right, it has that kind. Okay. A lot of people grab for the cleoids and the discoids, and I just feel they're very, very, very narrow. They're too narrow for our application here. And what ends up happening is you get striations. You get those like scratch lines in the wax, and it reflects in the final denture. So if you have these and you're using them, chuck them. I just don't think that I really don't think that they're doing you much good. Get a wide spoon like I showed you earlier. This narrow stuff is why you get this. See all those like scratchy lines? See all that? That's all scratchy. That's not tissue. Tissue doesn't look like that. And again, if the individual here probably only had that cleoid around or that discoid around, and probably has a full-service laboratory, and he tried to use a crown and bridge waxing instrument to give him these effects. There are some other things here, but that scratching is what I wanted to illustrate to you as being what we want to avoid, and that's how you avoid it, by using a wider curved instrument. See, blending the contours is what we're looking to do. That's why here, this is that Urco tool. I'll show you just another tool that I use. See how it's nicely rounded? I have narrow areas here and rounded areas. And everything just blends nicer when you have a full area, not just some little disc about the size of this little dot here going like this. You have a nice wide tool that's scraping and blending the contours. Wide and narrow. Not going to waste your time on that. There's the other working end of that Urco tool. So there's a tool you could use for, and not put down and use for outlining your tooth and putting in contours. Okay, you know, one of the things that I do a lot of now is this color veneering, and color veneering comes after you've placed your standard veneer, which would be your monochromatic pink colored material, and you've contoured it. That would be your Solidus 84 is the veneering wax that I use over the top of the Yates and Mottloy. But anyways, then I want to color veneer it. Patients are always looking for projection of value, especially on things like implant cases. It's huge. All these things on TV with the extreme makeovers and everything else, patients have just higher expectations. And again, if you want to compete on the mediocre, go out and buy yourself a piece of equipment and call it a day. But if you really want to compete out there, you've got to start offering services like color veneering. And I know a lot of you guys are going, oh, it's going to take a long time to do. It really doesn't. It doesn't add all that much time to it because you've already, before you even start colorizing the base, you already have all the contours in place. You're basically just adding wax coloring like I do when I colorize dentures. I'll show you. I wanted to make a point. Does that really project value? I don't think so. That projects value, folks. This is a quick way out. This is not biologic in color, neither is the wax, and all the other stuff is kind of lacking as well. And the fact of the matter is that I want my work to project what I'm charging for it. You know, I can't charge what I charge if I was to give somebody something like this. It has to have all the things that make it pop, all the things that project value for using Tom Zaleske, or whoever you are. Here's another one. I just put a question mark over it. Again, these blue bases with this really weird wax color, and again, we're trying to project value. Go with biologic, pink bases, some sort of pink in here for your veneering. The other problem is, and I know this wax, the color of it tells me it's extremely soft and has an extremely low melting point. It won't flame well and it won't carve well either. You want this. You want colorized areas. You want depressions, concavities, natural contouring. You want some texture of the base. I got this case comes in from the doctor. He likes to set his own. Before I do anything else, I bring all the contours in place. You'll notice, shorten the papillas. I got rid of that. I tried to get rid as much as possible that veneering wax he had, just to show you. If you have a plan, see how the tooth exposures are better, the eminences, everything. So this came in. This is how I wax it final. Okay, so in order to colorize the wax after you've gotten all the contours in place, you have to make yourself a color palette. That's what I call this, color palette. You know what it is? It's a tooth box from Vita for some VitaPan teeth, okay? It's the top lid. I took and I melted my Yeti Solidus 84 and put it in the bottom, poured it in there. And then I took Yeti Tho wax in 3 colors, a purple or violet, a white, and a red. And those are the 3 colors I'm using. That Tho wax, folks, your total investment will be under $100 for those 3 colors. And, of course, the base plate wax itself comes in a box, a 5-pound box. So this color palette will be with me until I obliterate it somewhat. And obliterating it by this. You'll notice I put a drop of the color here, but then what I do is I take it on the end of my instrument, and because this is the same, this Yeti Solidus is the same color and the same wax as my veneering wax, I colorize the veneering wax to certain intensities by just taking my instrument and blending it. I'll show you. Well, first off, your final waxing will be with this Yeti Tribos wax, which is a pink wax. I like to use this wax because it has a harder characteristic and it flames really nice and it carves real nice. And when I'm stippling the denture, texturizing a denture, I don't have to worry about holes being poked in it because it's so hard. Here's the Tho wax. Comes in 2 different shades, or comes in 3 shades as I showed you there on that thing. I use the PKT tip that comes with my dual pencil waxer from Whitmix. Again, I'm using the waxer, like the waxer. You notice that some of my tips are burned. I make no apologies. I'm one of those guys who walks away with the tip on, and it's going to get discolored if you don't turn it off. Occasionally, I'll go back over to my my media blaster, and I'll clean them up. Those tips slide right off, and as you can see, there's a variety of tips. I really like the unit. So I was talking about diffusing colors. Here's my little PKT tip. Now this is so concentrated, you don't want to add it. So what you want to do is you want to start to blend out the concentrations of the colors. So that's what I do is I blend them out. And so what I'll add first is the purple, and I'll take and I'll blend that out till it's just a hint of violet, and the same thing with the red, and I'll do the same thing with the white if I'm going to place it. And again, I'll place the violet in the areas above the areas where the interproximal, where the papillas are. Papillas are not purple. The purple color comes from the depth of the tissue between the root forms. And so what I do is I take and I'll fan it. I'll fan it out. And as I fan it out, I'll taper it to kind of a point right about here. And then when I'm doing this, this PKT tip is extremely hot, enough to where it blends the wax in, because I'm going to go back and refine it one last time once I get all the colors in place. Okay, there's a close-up of it. I've got the waxes in, and then I've taken and this would be some red, some violet, and then I use the Tribose gingival wax around the gingivas, gingival margins. And I use a little white. You've probably seen this little white blushing in tissue. I like to put that in. That's why I use the white. But again, you can see, if I follow the contour of the tooth, it dictates the papilla shape. And again, the color. Purple interproximally. Here's a root form, so it's purple in here. Here's a root form. Here's a root form. See if I can come up with this. You know, I figured it out. I designed this program on one year of PowerPoint, and I'm using 2010, and it doesn't switch. There. Okay. So here's what I'm talking about. If I was waxing the case with that PKT, first I would go here with the purple, not to go too far down. Then I would use a vascularity here, and then the next last. Okay. And then, again, like I'm saying, I'm taking my instrument, almost like these strokes here. I'm taking it and I'm blending it in, okay? I'm blending it in because I want it to diffuse. It can't be concentrated, okay? And again, it comes to the wax control with the colors as well. Then I do one more final blending once I get all the colors in, just to blend them all in so the contours are right and all the little hot wax marks are gone. And then to texture, instead of using packing sheets, I use Glad Cling Wrap. Ha, ha, ha. There's a dental-specific product, right? Well, fact of the matter is it's extremely thin. It stretches really nice, and I don't have to put a lot of pressure in it, and so I don't put huge gaping holes into my wax-ups. There's the material. It's extremely cheap, and see, my finger's not piercing that, but it's shaping to it, and that's extremely important when I'm going to take my little Robinson brush next and lay this sheet over my wax up and then take my brush and run it over. I don't have to press really hard to pick up very small indentations, which after I do the second step will make it more of a contour or a stippled orange effect rather than holes, pitted holes. Here. I do the old technique I learned back in school in the day, the old dude way. The brush is a stiff Robinson. I put my finger on this, and when I roll it, this rolls on the surface. I'm not real concerned about the gingiva areas because I've used that Tribose gingiva wax, which is hard, and this is not going to make really very few marks on it. Anyways, I'll roll that around, take it off, pull off the sheet once I've rolled it, and then I use wax solvent on a Q-tip, a very, very slight amount on the end of the Q-tip, and I go over the entire wax up with it. And what that does is, again, it smooths it out, but it also takes down that stippling that looks like holes and makes it more like texture. Then once I've gone over it just slightly with this, then I flip over my Q-tip, and on the dry side, I take and I dry off all the material. And as I'm drying it, it will literally take and just remove a micro layer of wax and really make the contours pop. Then finally at the end, I flame polish, and if you who have seen the first webinar, I use a hand-out torch because I can control the heat. I don't use those butane welders to flame polish my dentures. A lot of control with this. Hand-out has been making them for a million years. Whitmix now actually has hand-out products, and it's just a great it's a great flaming tool. Anyways, the fuel is low cost, inexpensive. It doesn't tip over. About 6 to 8 inches, and what you want to do is just flame this area just lightly so that the heat kind of trails off this direction. I'm just about done, folks. And there it is. There's your wax up, a little concentrated down here, just kind of gives some effect. You can see the subtleties of the color, the contour, and how everything else mixes together. Here's why you don't use boxing wax to wax up your cases or any wax with very low melting temperatures, because when you go to flame your stippling, this is the kind of stuff that occurs. That's why I suggest 84 hardness, which is 84 degrees C, a melting point, which makes it the most suitable for flaming. Then finally, I have a monochromatic evaluation. Either take an alginate of your wax ups and pour them up and look at them, or it's even easier, just convert your photos to monochromatic coloring, black and white. Give you a really good way to evaluate how you're progressing with your wax ups. I do it on all my stuff. It just keeps me on page. There's just a side profile. And, that was that same case I showed earlier with the coloring and the little effects. But you want to see how everything looks once you don't have all the colors getting in the way. There's both sides of that case. Here's a case off the internet, the one that I took, and I turned it black and white. And it didn't look that great in color either. But you can see the multitude of sins show themselves when you can make it monochromatic. This is likened to that ceramics. They use that silver or gold powder, and they brush it on the surface of a tooth to disclose the surface texture. Well, this discloses the wax texture by going monochromatic like that. And you can see all the things that show up, all these trenches. You don't want trenches, guys. You want this smooth flowing emergences. This here is a collection point. You're never going to polish it out, so why not do it in wax? Okay? There it is, same case in wax. It doesn't look that good in colorized either. But I think that the black and white really illustrates the deficiencies. So the difference is black and white. There's the same case, black and white, and I get a chance to evaluate my contours. Hopefully we challenged the ordinary today a little bit. You get an idea of exactly how you want to how to project your value rather than buying equipment, maybe making something that looks more natural. This is a completed case, and you can see it has all of the different characteristics. I continually challenge the ordinary, and I hope that you will too. It's just another final case. When the waxing is done correctly, the contouring and the stippling or texturizing, as I like to call it, is done right. When you finally process your case, these are the nice effects that you can get. So remember, pay no mind to those who talk behind your back. It simply means that you are 2 steps ahead. And I hope that you take some of these little pearls today and use them in your everyday work. Thanks for coming. I appreciate your attendance today, and I hope that you'll visit my YouTube channel and come to see me in some lectures where we can get more into detail on this stuff. Thanks again.
All right, thank you, Tom. At this time, we're going to open up it for questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the questions box. Again, this webinar was recorded and will be placed on our website at whitmix.com/webinars. It'll be up in about 48 hours. So if you want to review anything or show this to a coworker, just go ahead and go onto the website. So far, Tom, we do not have any questions.
Oh, that's a bad thing. I thought for sure I'd have at least one.
So I guess, do you have any final, oh.
Got a question.
Possibly.
I'll just say while you're fielding that, I'll just say that again, I can't reiterate enough that what made my laboratory successful was not competing on the buy equipment mode. It was all about the techniques and refining my techniques, because you eliminate 80% of your competition or better by getting good at doing something rather than buying something, because again, anybody can reach into their pocket and pull out a credit card and buy something, but it's the actual techniques and the honing of those techniques and delivering something beyond the ordinary that really build a business. That's how I built mine. And if you're a one-man dental laboratory, it should be the only way you're thinking, because otherwise you're going to be working those 18-hour days for the rest of your life. And I'll tell you, I haven't worked an 18-hour day in over 15 years. It just doesn't go with quality. How can you, if you're always under the gun, how can you produce quality? And quality is a mindset, and hopefully you'll continue to seek that out and realize that that is to your benefit and the patient's as well. Was there any other questions?
Yes, a few came in.
Okay, good.
This one is from Joe, and he asks, is there a moment in your career that was the aha moment when these techniques came to be?
Yes, that's a great question. It was like this. I was just like everybody else. I could show you stuff, and in my lectures I show my stuff when I first started. And I made one huge mistake, and everybody makes it. I tried to find the nicest looking dentures online, and then I tried to mimic them. And that was the wrong approach. It isn't about imitating that. It's about imitating nature. So my aha moment came when I started to realize that as soon as I started to chase nature rather than somebody else's view of it, I started to get better results. The aha moments came when I was able to see my work also in the mouth and in for trying. I've had some articles in Dental Lab Products magazine where I talk about communication with the camera. I had a lot of aha moments when I started using the camera, because I all of a sudden got a chance to see exactly what it looked like in the mouth rather than what my mind's eye thought it looked like in the mouth. And I cannot really promote photography and photography techno-clinically between the lab and the clinician. It's probably the best learning tool, the most aha type of moment. Now, I had an aha moment as far as how I was going to take my business direction, and that was I was out skiing once with a bunch of guys out in Colorado, and I ran out of money, and I remembered that somebody owed me a bunch of money that they were late on, and I realized that if I was going to enjoy the fruits of my labors, I was going to have to seek out clients who could pay me better, people who would appreciate my work better, and otherwise I was going to be like a lot of guys who I knew in the profession who, when I saw them, would say, hey, I didn't see you at the Midwinter show. Well, I had to work all weekend. And I had an aha moment there too. I was like, gosh, if that's what it's about, I don't know if I want to be in this anymore, because I want to do something better than that. Anybody can make a coat hanger, people. It's those who can make a nice covered coat hanger that separates men from the boys. Anyways, my aha moment, that's kind of like what it was, Sarah.
All right. Eric asks, does your pre-processing cycling affect the removal of gypsum during deflasking?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I use separator on my molds. I don't use putty, and I don't use any of that stuff that most people paint on. What I find that works extremely good for me is because first off, the stippling, the texturizing and so forth isn't so deep, it doesn't really adhere anyways because it's not deep enough to. But the secondary part of that is that when I coat my molds, the first coat of course goes on, and I use alginate-based separator for those who are wondering, just regular alginate-based separator. The Ultra Sep is one that I use from Keystone. But I paint my mold when it's warm to the touch and I can pick it up. But what I do differently, which really helps the mold separation, is that I devised and built myself a little air box with a hairdryer in it, and I never let the models get cool. Because I always found that if I put the first layer on when the model was hot and then allowed it to get to room temperature, when I added subsequent layers, I got that skinning effect where it came off. And it came to reason, in my mind anyways, that I had the surface already coated, and then it got cool, and then I'm putting cool separator on top of it, and they didn't bond to each other. So by keeping the mold warm like it was for the first layer and adding subsequent layers, I actually add 3 layers to it, I find that it gets a nice matty finish to it, and I don't get the skinning anymore. It also helps if you use a dental-specific surfactant-type cleaner for your mold, but that's a whole other subject. So to answer your question, no, I don't, but it has to do a lot also with not only the way they're waxed, but also in the mold washout and preparation before I pack them.
Okay. What is your best resource for viewing pictures of natural gingiva?
Well, the best resource, of course, is your doctors. That's that's a favor you have to ask for pictures of retracted tissue. I mentioned earlier, if you didn't catch it, I have the analysis book from Ubasi, which is 385 pages of teeth and tissue, natural teeth, natural tissue, in all different aspects and angles. It's an ideal book to go to. In fact, since I started using that Ubasi book for referencing, I found that I'm falling back on fewer and fewer pictures from either online, like glitching them from the internet, or asking doctors to give them. Fortunate for me, I do have a good relationship with my doctors, and if there's an anomalous case that has some really cool stuff, a lot of times doctors will just pop a shot and send it to me and say, hey, have you ever seen tissue that looks like this, or have you ever seen this kind of arrangement? So to answer your question, I would lean heavily on the Ubasi book, and then I would go on the internet and Google search the dickens out of natural teeth, natural tissue. Go to doctors' websites. Doctors like to brag about the veneers and about the crowns and everything they have, and they have generally full mouth, retracted shots where you can see into the vestibule, you can see into the corridor. That would answer that question.
Okay. One question here: do you paint or flow the separator around the teeth?
No, I paint it in. I've never been one for flowing it in. I actually have a number 2 brush that's a Takanishi brush that they use for ceramics, and I keep a point on it because those brushes come with a nice point. And when I'm through putting my separator around the necks of the teeth, I always wash it out, and I always pull it to a point, and I let it dry straight up so it always stays to a point. And I go in with that brush interproximally. On the broader areas of the denture, land areas and in the palatal region, I use a broad brush, just one that I can get it in. But I am definitely extremely cognizant of touching any of the teeth with the separator, and then in order to back that up, I'm the belt and suspender guy. If my suspenders fail, I still have a belt to hold my pants up, kind of thing. I always treat the necks of the teeth with some monomer. I wipe them off real good after the separator is dried, and then I also add the butanol, which is Palabond or Vitacol. It's basically a monomeric solvent, and that assures that there's nothing on the teeth keeping it from sticking.
All right. We have another question here. Who are your mentors or role models?
Well, for business, it was my father. My dad was an extremely successful businessman. He was a small business owner. He only had 35 employees, but he weathered many economic turns out there. and was always came out smelling like a rose because he never walked around all gloom and doom. He always felt that when there was a recession or a bad economy, it was a perfect time to like buckle down, tighten your belt, and work harder, because then when things got good, they would be even better. In terms of artistry or imitation, I was very fortunate early on in my career to have exposure to ceramists like Geller and Don Cornell and Dr. Bob Winter and fellas like that. And that led me to a Swiss dental technician by the name of Jörg Stuck, who is really big in Europe and extremely talented, from occlusion to building his own teeth, denture teeth, to all the Gerber concepts and so forth. He's a wonderful technician, extremely talented. Lose a little bit in the translation when you see him live, and I saw him like 4 times live. Spent 2 days, 3 days in a doctor technician environment with him, and I will tell you that that's about the only thing I could say that wasn't real good. Was we lose a lot in the translation because of the fact that he's not very fluently bilingual. But the fact of the matter is that I would say that he was my biggest inspiration to see where, well, actually what he did was he took me to the next level, because I was at a certain point where I felt like I was stubbing my toe, and I went to see him, and he changed my whole way of approaching a case. So I'd have to say Stuck probably would be my my biggest inspiration. And nobody really mentored me. I think I just attended the classes. And I know this probably goes against a lot of what a lot of guys do, but I'm a big self-educator, man. I'm like in on the game. I'm a student of the game. I get every book. I have every book that I possibly have that applies to what we do for a living. I'm always reading. I belong to the Journal of Prosthetic Dentistry subscription. I get that magazine. I get all the magazines. I keep myself pretty much abreast of everything, and it keeps me inspired because I see other people doing nice stuff out there, and that all keeps me inspired to continue to move forward. So that would probably be my answer to that.
All right, and with some of the books that you mentioned, where would the best place to go purchase them, like a Barnes & Nobles or maybe Amazon?
No, the majority of the books that I've purchased are from Quintessence Publishing. They have some really fine books. That was where I'd start. And then if you get a subject or a title of a book from there, you can always go to Amazon or one of those places and see if you can find a used copy for far less. They are expensive books, but I will tell you this. I have some of these books, occlusion books, and some of the early books from Frank Salenza that I got when I first got into dental technology back in the 80s. That have served me all the way through to nowadays. So Quintessence Publishing is my #1 source for the books that I have.
All right, and our last one is if you could just tell us your YouTube channel name again for everybody.
Yes, the YouTube channel is Tom Zale, Tomzale 56. And if you'll go to YouTube and search and find that channel, join that channel. You'll get updates every time I put a video in. There's about 17 or 18 videos in there. Some of them are as long as 20, 25 minutes, but the nice thing is that they're videos, and you can actually see me doing certain things which are very difficult to illustrate with static pictures, static images like we have here on our webinar. But yeah, Tom Zale 56, and then my website, of course, is matrixdentallab.com, and if you go to the tips and techniques area, you'll have about 50 articles you can download. And by the way, I'm real big on articles, downloading and keeping files, because one of the ways that I fortify my position with the doctors that I work with is that I can always send them PDFs on articles written by other doctors that fortify my position or the reason I do certain things. And it's about helping our clinical partners with our technical knowledge, and sometimes by giving them an article written by a clinical source qualifies us better for whatever reason. I've gotten past that now. Most of the doctors know that if I send them an article like how to set an attachment, that I'm sending it to them because I want to help them out, and it's not like I'm trying to be controlling. But I keep folders for all that kind of stuff, so whenever there's a question, I just send the file. That'd be it?
Yeah, those are all the questions.
Great.
So we want to thank you
Yes.
for everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Yeah, everybody stay in touch. I'll see you on Facebook. If you're not there, come and see me, Zaleske Removable Prosthetics, of course. Come visit the YouTube channel, and hope to see you here this coming 2012 at the Midwinter Show in Chicago. Thanks again for attending, and stay tuned for other types of events like this featuring the things that I do. Thanks again.
All right, thank you so much. Bye, everybody.